Now, Jimmy's story is an interesting story, but don't forget that the story of Jimmy is the corroboration, if you will, of this insight or revelation that God gave me, that Jesus Christ is cleverly disguised as you and I. I used to work in an institution for emotionally disturbed kids. Now, don't ask me what an emotionally disturbed kid is, because I don't know. These were lovely kids, but they had trouble in school, and they had trouble with their emotions, and they had challenging family homes. My duties was I was assigned as a child care worker on the senior boys unit. These are boys between 13 and 16, and one of the boys was Jimmy. Now, Jimmy was an African-American boy, and he was endowed with great, could we say, handsomeness or beauty. He was a tall boy, he had a beautiful smile, and he had snow-white teeth. His physique, he looked like Charles Atlas. He was chiseled. He was an excellent physical specimen. Okay, so this is the situation. Now, I was on duty one particular Sunday evening, with another counselor named Rich. The boys were watching television, and a commercial came over the television and said, tomorrow night, Monday night at the movies, the movie Patton is going to be shown. Now, I don't know if you, the viewer, have seen the movie Patton, but it's a splendid, very masculine, very virile, victorious movie. So Rich and I told the kids, make your beds, don't have any problems, obey all the rules. You guys, all of you, really want to see this movie Patton. And the kids got excited about it. Now, I happened to be on duty the following night along with Rich. So the boys had cleaned their rooms. They were sitting there. Popcorn was popped. And the movie Patton, if you remember, was one in which George C. Scott appeared before a huge American flag, dressed as General Patton. And his boots were knee-high. They were spit-shined. And he had knickers on. He had a riding crop in his hand. He was walking back and forth. I'm sure you remember this. Back and forth in front of the American flag with his riding crop. Then he stopped and he said to the soldiers, people will tell you that it's an honor to die for your country. But I'm here to tell you that we want to give that honor to the blankety, 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 blanketed Germans. Well, the kids, they were punching the air. They were cheering. It was an extraordinary episode. And then it was the first commercial break. So during the commercials, I recounted or made a comment to my colleague Rich. I said, Rich, isn't George C. Scott terrific? And Rich, of course, agreed with me. Now, Jimmy was listening to our conversation, and he said, you mean the fellow in the helmet is George C. Scott? And Rich said, yeah. And Jimmy said, well, then where's General Patton? Well, Rich went on to explain that George C. Scott was playing the role of General Patton, so the guy in the helmet was, so Jimmy turns around and says, you mean the guy in the helmet? You mean that's General Patton? And Rich said, yeah, and then Jimmy said, well, then where's George C. Scott? And Rich and I exchanged a glance, and the glance was, Jimmy doesn't get it. Dear ones, you and I don't get it either. We're as confused as Jimmy was between George C. Scott and General Patton. See, we think, let me use myself as an example. I think Tom Wright is the real deal. But the revelation that I got from God is that Jesus Christ is portraying Tom Wright. And I don't get it any more than Jimmy did. You don't get it any more than Jimmy did. What we're really discussing here is that Jesus Christ is alive today, walking the earth, cleverly disguised as me and you. And we don't get it. We think that General Patton is what it's all about. We forget that George C. Scott is portraying that character. Who's portraying you? And who's portraying me? The revelation I received is Jesus Christ of Nazareth is. Now, when I lived in my former hometown, there was a 92-year-old gentleman whom I visited once a week. His name was Ray, and Ray had been studying the Scriptures for 50 years. So I walked in, and I said to Ray, Ray, do you think it could conceivably be true that I've been carrying around Jesus all this time and didn't know it? Now, Ray would never give me a straight answer. But he looked at me and he smiled. I had told him the episode that I've just recounted to you. He looked at me and smiled and he said, no, Tom. Jesus has been carrying you around all these years. You see, we don't get it. We don't get it. We don't read the tea leaves right. We're always wrong. We always misinterpret the facts. That's why we think that this is the real stuff. It isn't the real stuff at all. Mother Teresa understood this, and God is trying to get it across to us that we should understand it as well. You see, we don't have a Christness like I might have tried to explain in the first half of the video. We don't have a Christness. This revelation is we are a Christness. We are one. It's a critical notion to get a hold of. So not only is Christ not over there and I'm over here, but as a matter of fact, I'm a disguise that Christ is wearing. I pray that you have the grace to be able to entertain that notion, because it'll open up life to you like you've never had it open up before. In fact, let me submit something to you that is a conclusion that one could draw based on what we've just said. Jesus is not out there trying to get in. This revelation will tell us Jesus is in here trying desperately to get out. And we've discussed this in a previous video, that we're really a paradoxical. We see things backwards. So it's perfectly understandable that we would assume that we are a tail that is really wagging the dog rather than the other way around. Let's see if I should give you an example. I want to skip that example and go on to something else. If Jesus is inside us trying to get out, rather than outside us trying to get in, what can we do to let Jesus out? The realization or the revelation of Jesus in us. Remember the quote we had in the first half of the video? The mystery of all mysteries is Christ in you, the hope of glory. How do we get something that's in us out? I remember engaging in some prayers about that. I said, Lord, if Christ is in us, how do we get him out? And I got an image, and the image was of an old crude oil derrick. As a matter of fact, I knew exactly what oil derrick it was. The first oil well that ever came in the United States took place in Titusville, Pennsylvania. They constructed an old rickety derrick, broke the ground, and immediately there was a spurt. Now, they knew that they had oil there or had something because there was brown, black, greasy liquid leaking into the streams and the creeks. So they really knew they had something in there, but I've seen pictures of the Titusville derrick, and the Lord put that in my head, and he said, and I said, well then, okay, so in order to get something that's out, we need to construct a derrick and break ground, and it will come. And immediately after that, the Lord gave me another picture. And this time, interestingly enough, it was my grandmother's house. My grandmother had an artesian well in her backyard, and the family was very proud of this. But the story is that one day, my grandmother was going about her affairs, a knock on the door, a man was standing there saying, I've heard that there are wells in this area, he said. And for $2, I'll take my dowsing rod. He had an actual wooden rod, and I'll go around your backyard, and we'll see if we can find, well, my grandmother had $2 in the cookie jar, and she gave it to this man. He went out to his car, got this stick that looked like the peace symbol, and walked around, and all of a sudden, it clearly bent, And he went to his car again and got a shovel, a couple of spadefuls of dirt, and here was an artesian well, bubbling to this day. And it's the pride and joy of my grandmother's family. So as I'm going through this, this course of sprouts with the Lord, I say, okay, I understand. The way you get something in out is you make a derrick, you break ground, or you use a dowsing rod and you shovel, and the water comes. I said, Lord, what is the spiritual equivalent of a derrick and a drill? And what's the spiritual equivalent of a dowsing rod and a shovel? And the Lord gave me the answer immediately. And I'll tell you what it is. The spiritual equivalent is a broken heart. A broken heart. I know so many people that have had, in fact, I know very few people that haven't had a broken heart. But everybody is trying to bury it and forget it and ignore it and bandage it up with Scotch tape and baling wire. But the way the Lord revealed to me that the Christ in us gets out, or this, the Jesus that's walking the earth cleverly disguised as you and I, manifests himself as through a broken heart. Now, I'm not advising anybody to go out and become heartbroken. But I'm also suggesting to you, don't ignore your broken hearts, because that's where Christ begins to manifest himself in your life. What does that look like scripturally? Let me read you a scripture here. Paul is talking about this in Galatians chapter 2, verse 20. I have been crucified with Christ, and I no longer live, but Christ lives in me. The life I live in the body, I live by faith in the Son of God, who loved me and gave himself for me. What Paul is saying is the Paul of Paul's life has been crucified, abandoned, dead. Yet he still lives. But the life he lives, it's Christ who lives through him. And this is the scriptural corroboration of what I was given in terms of Jesus being cleverly disguised as you and I. What we should seek is to live in such a way that our Tom Wright or our John Doe or our Jane Doe really has been extinguished, or if you will, crucified, as Paul says, so that the life that we live through the Christness that is our essential, that is the actor who's portraying us. Now, why in the world should we do something like that?